Let's catch up on Syracuse basketball recruiting.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, it's a basketball recruiting update. I know for a while on this channel, it's been mostly football coverage, and, well, Syracuse football is really good, and obviously the season is going on right now, so why not cover Syracuse football a lot? But today, we take a step back and we go towards Syracuse basketball just for one episode, just to pause for one episode, because there's been some news regarding Syracuse basketball recruiting. 2025 four-star guard Derek Dixon announced his decision date. Syracuse is in the top 6. Acaden Lewis, Syracuse had really been pursuing this four-star guard. He announced his final 4 schools. We're going to break it down. And plus, other Syracuse targets in the class of 2025. There's been some positive news regarding their only commit. 5-star forward Sadiq White moved up in the ESPN rankings. And of course, what's going on with Kiyan Anthony? When can we expect a decision? What is overall just going on in his recruitment? We're going to break it all down here on today's podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. So let's dive right into Derek Dixon, a 2025 4-star guard. And the major news is that he announced his decision date to 24/7 High School Hoops over on Twitter. It is 12 days from now. The exact date is September 27th. Now, Derek Dixon is 6'3", 190 pounds, and he is from Washington, D.C. Now, the reason why I mention he's from Washington, D.C. is because that is in the DMV region, and it has been a while since we have done a basketball recruiting update. So let me refresh your memories a little bit and remind you guys that the DMV area is a Syracuse basketball recruiting hotbed. They love recruiting from that area. They get a lot of their targets from the DMV region. Some past recruitments just in the last few years, honestly. Just last few years. Judah Mintz from the DMV area and Donnie Freeman, who is the number 6 overall player in the country, and he's playing this season in 2024. So those are just a couple of guys who've come from there in the past few years. Derek Dixon, of course, from Washington, D.C., following that trend of Syracuse basketball targets. Now, Syracuse is in the top 6 for Derek Dixon alongside Vanderbilt, Arizona, North Carolina, Pitt, and Virginia. So it's going to be tough competition to land him 12 days from now. And of course, he's a really talented prospect. I mentioned he is a 4-star. The On3 industry rankings have him top 50 overall in the country. So this is one of the better guards overall across the entire nation. One of the better players across the entire nation, and in Derek Dixon. Now, as far as Syracuse's odds of landing him, look, they're in the top 6. They have shown interest in the past on him, and they have gotten him on an official visit. That was last year. Actually, it was last September. However, I would not, in my opinion, consider Syracuse among the favorites to land Derek Dixon. Now, this is recruiting, and things can change on a dime with these guys. You just never quite know. But in my opinion, I wouldn't consider Syracuse the favorite or among the favorites to land Derek Dixon. And here's why. When the fall recruiting period opened earlier this month, it allows coaches to conduct in-home visits, and we'll talk about that later with Kiyan Anthony. And it also allows coaches to see the prospects in their high school gyms. All right. Now, Dixon, a couple of weeks ago, had a showcase in his gym, or he was playing game, whatever it was, he was in his gym, and there were a number of colleges in attendance to watch Derek Dixon play. According to @HS Top Recruiting over on Twitter, there were 5 total schools on there. Syracuse was not among those 5 schools. So what does that tell you? What does it tell you if they're not there, right? Now, I can't 100% confirm they weren't there, but I also can't confirm that they were there. And due to that post on Twitter about those 5 schools in Syracuse not being mentioned, chances are they weren't. Okay? So take it with a grain of salt, but in my opinion, they probably were not there to watch Derek Dixon. So are they really, truly, fully prioritizing him? I'm not so sure. And it's not the end of the world because Syracuse is going after a number of guards in the class of 2025. Kiyan Anthony, Tyler Jackson, Keyshawn Tillery. There's been a little bit of news with him lately in Syracuse basketball. So overall, are they truly prioritizing Derek Dixon? I'm not so sure. But again, they are in the top 6. And number 2, as to why I don't think Syracuse is among the favorites for him, is because there have been multiple sources that have indicated there are 2 finalists for Derek Dixon. The first of which is UNC. Now, I want you to listen to this, okay? Derek Dixon recently had an official visit with North Carolina. He was then supposed to have a visit with Arizona. However, he canceled the visit to Arizona after his North Carolina visit, and then he announced when he's making his decision. So what does that tell you? North Carolina is among the favorites to land Derek Dixon. Now, secondly, because I mentioned there are favorites for him, the second school is Pitt. Now, apparently there are some family ties with Pitt, but also if you check a major recruiting service in Rivals, they actually have him predicted to land with Pitt. So it really seems like it's going to come down to North Carolina and Pitt. But once again, it's still 12 days. Syracuse, in my mind, is in an uphill battle for him. At the same time, you never fully know. You never fully know in recruiting. Things can change on a dime. But that is just my gut feeling based on the information that I have seen and based on the information that I have read, that Syracuse is most likely not going to land Derek Dixon. Is it the end of the world? Not necessarily, because, well, they are pursuing other guards in the class of 2025. We just went over the names: Kiyan Anthony, Keyshawn Tillery, Tyler Jackson. We're going to get to Acaden Lewis in a second, but spoiler alert, they're out on Acaden Lewis. But they're going after a lot of guards, and they're going after a lot of prospects overall. You're not going to land every single one of them. All right? So, once again, Derek Dixon, a 4-star guard from Washington, D.C. in the class of 2025, who has Syracuse in his top 6, announced that he is making his decision on September 27th. So, Syracuse fans, keep your eye on that, and let's see if the Orange can truly jump back into the race. Now, coming up, we're going to talk about Acaden Lewis. He recently released his Final Four. Syracuse, unfortunately, did not make the cut. We're going to break it all down here on Locked On Syracuse. Syracuse football is playing on Friday night against Stanford. And man, as great as I hope that game is, I'm going to need a 5-hour energy shot because, oh boy, I'm going to have to record a podcast pretty late in the evening to get it to you guys on that Saturday. Now, 5-hour energy fixes tired fast, whether you have a long list to do for work or a list of DIY projects to tackle at home. Take a 5-hour energy shot so you can check everything off your bucket list. If you are like me, you always have a large list of projects for the home. When you get your supplies for the project, do not forget the most essential supply, which is a 5-hour energy shot. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it is delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code, Locked On CFB, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Let's talk about another guard that Syracuse basketball had been pursuing in the class of 2025. And keywords are had been pursuing. 2025 four-star guard Acaden Lewis announced his final four finalists, and Syracuse, unfortunately, did not make the cut. Lewis is 6'2", 185 pounds, and he is actually from Washington, D.C. That is the DMV area. But even though it's a recruiting hotbed for Syracuse, you're still not going to land every single player that comes from that region. His recruitment has skyrocketed since last spring. He is now ranked as high as the 28th overall player in the country over on ESPN. Syracuse was in his top 8 just a couple of months ago, but unfortunately, he trimmed his list down to 4. Syracuse did not make the cut. And this is one, I can't put it on Syracuse. All right? I'm going to get to his final 4 schools in just a second, but just a quick disclaimer. This is one where you kind of just have to throw up your hands and say, I don't know what you want Syracuse to do. Okay? Because his final 4 schools for Acaden Lewis, are you ready for it? Are you ready? All right, here it goes. His final 4. Duke. That's a blue blood. Kentucky. Blue blood. UConn. That's a blue blood too. That's 3 blue bloods. There can't possibly be a 4th in his final 4, could they? Oh, yes, they can. Yep. UNC. Duke, Kentucky, UConn, North Carolina are his final 4 schools. Let that marinate for a second. Yeah. What do you want Syracuse to do there? Honestly, I mean, they had been pursuing him for quite a while, and it seemed like Syracuse, based on things that I was reading, that the Orange were actually in a pretty good shape to land him. But that's what happens when you get those type of schools involved. Again, is it the end of the world because Acaden Lewis is a guard? No, they're pursuing other guards in the class of 2025. I would have loved to have Acaden Lewis, especially in the final 4. And I thought for a while that Syracuse, if he were to trim a list, would make it. But I cannot really be mad that he's not in their final 4. It is what it is. And just to put it more into perspective, Acaden Lewis's final 8 was as impressive as you're ever going to see. Obviously, it included the 4 schools that are in his final 4. Then it was Syracuse. And the other 3 schools, you ready for this? Tennessee, Michigan, and Auburn. So we knew that this was going to be a very, very tough recruitment for Acaden Lewis. Regardless if Syracuse was among the favorites or not, this was going to be an extremely difficult player to get. So I cannot be upset at Syracuse for their effort in trying to get him. I'm obviously not going to be upset at the prospect because, well, Acaden Lewis is making a decision that is best for himself. He has to think for himself in this scenario because you really only get one choice coming out of high school. I know there's the transfer portal, but you only get one choice out of high school. Kind of. I mean, you get one signing out of high school, I should say. You can flip a recruitment before you sign. But regardless, I can't be that mad about Acaden Lewis not having Syracuse in his final 4. Am I bummed because he's a good player? Absolutely. I want all the good players to come to Syracuse, and so should you, right? We want this basketball team to be really, really good. But at the same time, when your final 4 is Duke, Kentucky, UConn, and UNC, I just got to throw my hands in the air and say, you know what? Like good for him. Good for Acaden Lewis. So overall, did Syracuse make the finalists for Acaden Lewis? No, they did not. But I'm in a cheerful mood. Maybe it's because the football team is good this year. So I'm not really too bummed about it. But that is the update with Acaden Lewis. And regarding this podcast, I'm going to cover the good, and I'm also going to cover the bad. And if you really want to consider this bad news, you can. It's not really the worst news in the world that they missed out on a prospect. But you get the idea. I'm not going to just sit here and try to hide that, oh, they didn't make his Final Four, because then you're left wondering what's going on. So, big takeaway. Acaden Lewis, one of the top 30 players overall in the country. Syracuse have been heavily pursuing him. They did not make the cut in his Final Four. Instead, it is 4 Blue Bloods that are pursuing him. And as far as the favorites among those Final Four, I got to be honest with you, I do not care. I don't at all, because Syracuse is not among those 4. So I don't care. So that is it with Acaden Lewis. It was nice trying to recruit him, but seems like he is moving on. So we've gone over Derek Dixon. We've gone over Acaden Lewis. Who are some other Syracuse prospects that we need to keep an eye on? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Syracuse. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So guys, you still have a week left to capitalize on this deal. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And speaking of Syracuse football, because we can go to football for just a second here on this basketball recruiting update, Syracuse is a 9.5-point home favorite against Stanford. Yes, the odds have been released on the game. I talked about it yesterday, how I didn't know. Now we know it's 9.5 points in favor of Syracuse, and the Orange's money line is -345. So go check it out on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Here are some other prospects that you need to keep your eye on for Syracuse basketball, okay? Let's start off with Syracuse's only commit so far in the class of 2025. I am talking about Sadiq White, a 6'8" forward from North Carolina. He committed to Syracuse this summer, and so far, as I have indicated previously, it seems to be holding true. Everything is looking good regarding Sadiq White. His commitment to Syracuse doesn't seem like anything is changing. That's obviously great news for the Orange. Now, as far as updates for him, there are a couple of updates. First of all, ESPN updated their top 100 players in the class of 2025, and Sadiq White, he moved up a lot. I don't remember where he was previously, but I can promise you he was not where he is now. He has moved up drastically. He is now the 15th best player in the country over on ESPN, earning that 5th star. So Sadiq White is now a 5-star on ESPN, and he is also a 24/7 Sports composite 5-star recruit. So congratulations to Sadiq White, and that's good news for Syracuse that it seems as though he is only getting better. He still has an entire high school season before he arrives to campus. And speaking of high school season, Sadiq White recently announced that he is transferring to IMG Academy for this upcoming high school basketball season. Now, you guys might be wondering, what does that matter? Well, IMG Academy is a premier high school sports athletic program. So many top-notch athletes in high school go to IMG Academy. They go on to have very successful careers in college, and some of them, of course, go on to the professional ranks. IMG Academy is a powerhouse high school program. So Sadiq White transferred there, I think this summer. It was last month, I want to say, when he did that, but it's been a while since we've done a basketball recruiting update for you guys, so I figured I'd tell you guys that information. Now, this is something also that Donnie Freeman did for his senior year. He transferred to IMG Academy as well, and well, look at what happened with Donnie Freeman. He got even better as a prospect. He just kept rising in the recruiting rankings. So let's just hope that Sadiq White can do the same. He already rose, on ESPN. Now, let's talk about Kiyan Anthony. Talked about earlier in the podcast that there has been news with him. He is 6'5", 185 pounds from New York. He is now a consensus top 40 prospect among all the major recruiting services. And actually, it's really weird because a lot of times with prospects, especially in that range of top 40, you can have some of them be like 20, and other recruiting services will have him at 39, right? They always seem to differ slightly. They generally get a good list of them correct. But with Kiyan Anthony, it seems like every recruiting service has him in like the exact same area across the country. Kiyan Anthony, his recruiting ranking falls anywhere between 36 and 30. That's pretty impressive. Between 36 and 30. So overall, if you do a nice round number, he's top 40 overall in the country. Now, he recently had an in-home visit with Syracuse on September 4th, which is obviously a really good indicator that Syracuse feels like a favorite for Kiyan Anthony, and there's mutual interest between the two schools. However, I have to let you guys know that Kiyan Anthony is taking visits to other places as well, which was, by the way, not unexpected for Kiyan Anthony to do. I know that we all want Kiyan Anthony to commit to Syracuse, but at the same time, he's going to go through the process just like any other high school recruit is going to go through. It's not uncommon. He has a visit scheduled with with USC this weekend, so we'll keep an eye out on that, and also has a visit planned with Rutgers, who is in his final six, by the way. And Syracuse and Kiyan Anthony, regarding the final six, well, obviously the Orange are in it, but Auburn, Florida State, Ohio State, USC, and Rutgers. Those are the final six for Kiyan Anthony. Now, I said with Derek Dixon that Syracuse is not among the favorites for him. I told you with Acaden Lewis that Syracuse is no longer in his Final Four, but I'm also going to cover the good news, and that is that Syracuse seems to be the heavy favorite to land Kiyan Anthony, okay? Now, of course, there's family ties to it as well. Need I remind you that his dad, Carmelo Anthony, was a freshman in 2003 and won a national championship with Syracuse, their only national title in program history. As far as a decision time frame, because we're all on kind of pins and needles waiting for it, nothing has really changed regarding it from what I have said over the summer. So I'll remind you guys, it's coming in October or November. That is what Kiyan Anthony has said. So let's see how the process all unfolds. But I have a strong belief that Syracuse is the favorite to land Kiyan Anthony. So that's good news with him. Let's go to London Jemison, 6'7", 195-pound forward from Connecticut. He ranks anywhere between 38 and 53 across the nation. But you see how recruiting services will kind of deviate or differ in their ranking. That's why it was so weird with Kiyan. When I checked it, it's anywhere between 30 and 36. With London Jemison, there's a 15-player gap between 38 and 53, right? But still, very, very good player in the nation. He visited with Syracuse last December, and also Syracuse went to see London Jemison, according to @Deffer_Murray over on Twitter. And Syracuse is in Jemison's final six list of schools, along with Alabama, Virginia, Kansas, Vanderbilt, and Louisville. So we'll have to keep an eye out to see when a decision is going to occur and if Syracuse is considered one of the favorites. I am not so sure, to be honest with you, on it. But hey, we're in the top six. We recently saw him play, or not we, Syracuse recently saw him play. So let's keep an eye out on that. There are plenty of other prospects to keep an eye on as well, but I won't go too far into the weeds on them. Sean Abayev, he is a four-star forward from Florida. He officially visited with Syracuse sometime. I don't know exactly when. Oh, wait, never mind. Sean Abayev officially visited with Syracuse just a couple of weeks ago. I believe he was in attendance for that Syracuse-Ohio football game. He has not released a final list yet, but, we'll see what happens. I don't know where Syracuse stands regarding Sean Abayev, but they did have that official visit with him just a couple of weeks ago. It was Syracuse and Ohio. Now, Tyler Jackson, a four-star guard who said over the summer that him and Kiyan Anthony had been talking about possibly teaming up at Syracuse. Well, his recruitment has been kind of quiet. I haven't been able to find too much regarding Tyler Jackson, so when I do, I'll keep you in the loop on that. But it's been kind of quiet recently. I'm not so sure if Syracuse is a favorite nor not a favorite. It's just been a quiet recruiting period for Tyler Jackson so far. Keyshawn Tillery, another name to keep an eye on, a four-star guard from Albany. He has unofficially visited with Syracuse, and just keep your eye on him because I indicated that, or I told you that the Orange aren't really the favorite to land Derek Dixon. They're obviously out on Acaden Lewis. So do the Orange now shift their focus to Keyshawn Tillery? That's the question regarding that. There are obviously so many prospects that Syracuse is still in the running for, or there are prospects to update you on. I can't cover them all here on today's podcast. So if you have a question regarding a specific prospect that I didn't mention, leave a comment in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer that question. If it's about any prospect that Syracuse is or isn't going after, I'll try to answer it for you. So just leave a comment in the comment section below. Now, as far as plans for the upcoming week, I'm sure I'll post at some point a programming list for the week. Stanford is coming to the Dome on Friday night. So we're going to shift gears back to football for the remainder of the week. This was just a quick basketball recruiting update because we haven't done one in a while. Don't know if I'm going to do a mini podcast on Monday. We'll see. Maybe, maybe not. But we'll have full podcasts Tuesday through Thursday. All right, we're going to preview the Stanford game. Now, Poll Friday usually is released on Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern, with Syracuse and Stanford kicking off at 7:30. That is not going to be the case. So Poll Friday will be released earlier in the day on Friday, so stay tuned for that. I'll let you guys know when I'm going to post Poll Friday. I'm going to also post the question tomorrow on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse and in the YouTube community section. There will also be a full podcast following the Stanford game, whether it's in the wee hours of Saturday night, Sunday morning, or if it's Sunday morning at, let's say, like 9 a.m. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to post that, but there will be a post-game coverage episode for Syracuse and Stanford, and then another one following the game as well. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, go to Locked On College Football. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin has you covered this season on the gridiron. Find Locked On College Football on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, thank you guys all so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, hit that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.